I want to assert something bold right now. That is, that even the most broken people can reinvent themselves and become somebody they have never known. It doesn't matter if you've lived your life on the streets, been a lifelong drug addict, or spent your life in and out of jails and prisons. Anyone can change. I know this because I was one of those broken people. I was a self-centered, hedonistic, gun-running, drug-dealing, out-of-control drug addict and criminal for nearly 25 years. By the time I was 38, I had done 4 consecutive prison terms, totaling almost 20 years. When I wasn't in prison, I was on my way back. Ladies and gentlemen, I spent the first half of my life helping people die. I intend on spending the rest of it helping them live. My personal reinvention began around 11 years ago on a really bad day in Southern California. I was going over to a friend's house to get high and weigh up some dope for sale. I happened to look out the window and spotted a helicopter hovering really high in the sky. It really wasn't going anywhere. I didn't think much of it. I had other things on my mind. A couple of hours later, when I was ready to hit the street, when I did, there was what seemed like 100 cop cars in hot pursuit. Sirens blaring, lights flashing. The helicopter had lowered down and was shining its spotlight in my car, making it almost impossible to drive. I had told myself on a previous prison term that if I ever got chased by the police again, I wasn't going to stop. I knew if they caught me, I would do the rest of my life in prison. There was only one thing that was going to stop me today, and that was a bullet. So I took those police on a high-speed chase. It was a hectic and harried moment. I went through red lights. I displaced every car in my path. I had absolute, total wanton disregard for public safety. All I could think about was getting away. And in the process, getting to a bridge in Huntington Beach so I could throw all the dope out the window and into the water. I never made it. As I came around the corner, I noticed the roadblock, and I had a decision to make. Actually, my decision was already made. I wasn't going to stop. I was going to commit suicide by cop. So I hunkered down and I drove through that roadblock anticipating the gunshots. They never came. As I made the left-hand turn, the cop behind me did the pit maneuver, spun me out of control, and I crashed into an embankment. When the dust settled, I looked for something, anything, just to hold up so the cops would shoot me. I never got that chance either. They immediately pulled me out of the car, threw me on the ground, and commenced to giving me the worst beating I'd ever taken. The last thing I remember hearing them say was, "Stop, stop, you're going to kill him." A couple days later, I was in jail. Again, facing 29 years, which essentially would have been the rest of my life. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something. During one of my previous prison terms, I'd heard of a place called Delancey Street. It was an alternative to prison. It was for guys like me, knuckleheads, who just didn't know how to live right. Guys who needed to either learn or relearn everything there was about living a good, law-abiding, value-centered life. I had written them back then, and they interviewed me, only they didn't accept me. So I decided, what do I got to lose? And I wrote them again. This time they interviewed me, and they did accept me. When I went to court, I'll never forget it. In the cage, shackled, the judge said, "Mr. Durocher, against my better judgment, I'm going to send you to Delancey Street, but you're going to plead guilty today to 22 years. That way, when you get kicked out or you split, I've got you for the rest of your life." I couldn't sign that plea bargain fast enough. And although it didn't really matter to me what Delancey Street was, what mattered to me is that it was 2 years, not 22. Something else happened to me during that year that I was in jail. I had plenty of time to contemplate my life and how things had gotten to this point. And for the first time ever, I really wanted to do something different. I wanted to change. I was broken, I was tired, and I was scared. I knew prison wouldn't help me. I'd done that 4 times already. I knew a typical 30, 60, or 90-day program wouldn't help me either. I was too damaged and stuck in my destructive lifestyle for anything short like that to do me any good. I needed something drastic. And if there's one thing I knew about Delancey Street, is that it was drastic on steroids. So what is it about a therapeutic community that can take an absolute animal like I had become and turn him into the man standing before you today? Somebody who has regained the love of his family and the respect of his peers. Somebody who was afforded the opportunity to launch the Other Side Academy, a therapeutic community modeled after Delancey Street right here in Salt Lake City. And even more amazing than that, a guy who's finagled his way up here on stage today to talk to you about monumental personal change, about reinventing broken lives, and to do so from personal, firsthand experience. That's amazing to me. So, how does a place like that do what they do? That's what I want to talk to you about today. First, you must choose to change. Nobody gets sent to a therapeutic community without first asking for help. Then you have to endure a very robust interview process. Even then, you have to come to the facility, take a seat on the bench. That bench is purposely and strategically placed by the front door of that facility. It is symbolically and literally the portal between your old life and your new one. And we want you to sit and marinate in that for a while. If you're lucky enough to get through that second interview, then the hard work begins. Do you remember earlier I mentioned I had written Delancey Street and they had rejected me? Many years later, when I became an interviewer, I realized why. I never would have taken me either. All I told that interviewer about was the drugs, the guns, the women, the chaos, the mayhem. Never once did I ask him for help. Never once did I tell him I wanted to change. He saw right through me, and he left me right where I belonged, in jail. Fast forward 10 years to my next interview. I will never forget it. Again, in the interview room in shackles, there in front of me was a man in a shirt and tie. He asked me questions about my family, about my kids, and about how my life had gotten to this point. The final question he asked me was, "Why should I accept you?" And I told him, because I want help. No, I begged him for help. And unlike my first interview, that interviewer saw a truly humble man with a burning desire to change. He told me that I would get a letter in the next week or so letting me know whether or not I'd been accepted. When he got up to walk away, I was banging on that glass and banging on that glass, getting his attention, begging him for a chance. You see, the bottom line is this. When you are ordered to a program, you are practically guaranteed to fail. It gets in the way of your personal responsibility of choosing to change and the power inherent in making that choice. My change began when I chose to ask for help. Next, it takes the right environment. Unlike conventional rehabs, a therapeutic community is completely peer-driven. There are no professional doctors, there are no counselors, and there are no therapists. Instead, there are former drug addicts and former criminals who have come before you, put the hard work in to turn their lives around. It is this approach that provides instant credibility to newcomers and visible proof that change is possible. Everybody learns early on in their own reinvention that helping others is the key. It's an each one, teach one process. We like to say, when A helps B, A gets better. Next, it takes humility. This was a big one for me. When I got to Delancey Street, I didn't even know what the word meant. I thought Delancey Street revolved around me. I wanted everybody to know who I thought I was. When they were getting ready to assign jobs, I wanted everybody to know I was ready to work here, I was ready to work there, I was ready to be in charge of this, or I was ready to be in charge of that. I barely had my foot in the door, and I'd put myself in charge of the whole facility. The gentleman who was running the facility at the time, his name was Jimmy, and he had this little dog. It was no bigger than a cat, seriously. But every day, he'd come out and he'd let that dog run down those stairs and poop right where I was working in landscaping. I was in charge of this little piece of grassy area. Every single day, he'd let that dog run down there and poop right there where I was working. I couldn't believe he was doing this to me. I got so mad I wanted to drop kick that dog onto the 101 freeway and run back up those stairs and smack Jimmy with that shovel. That's how bad it was for me. I had just beaten a 22-year prison sentence, yet I was too good to pick up dog poop with a shovel. Today, I would pick it up with my bare hands. Who cares? Turns out that steamy helping of humility is exactly what I needed, because something else significant happened to me about 3 years later. I actually was in charge of the entire facility. It was my responsibility to oversee 250 students, 15 vocational training schools that generated literally millions of dollars every year to help fund the entire operation so we could continue to help people turn their lives around without charging them a dime, no matter how long they needed to stay. It was the most significant accomplishment of my entire life up until launching the Other Side Academy. However, none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for that lesson in humility. Truth is, true humility is the catalyst for change. Next, you must invest the time it takes to change. Another problem with conventional rehabs is that they are designed around funding rather than helping. You have to leave when the money runs out, whether it be the 30th, the 60th, or the 90th day. So let me ask you, what are the odds that a guy like me, after 25 years of drug addiction and criminal behavior, is going to be ready on the 30th, the 60th, or the 90th day? Seriously? Highly unlikely. In a therapeutic community, you stay until you're ready. As a matter of fact, you have to commit to 2 years just to get in. And if you need to stay longer, that's okay too. Many people do. I stayed in Delancey Street for 8.5 years. 2 years to get out of a 22-year prison sentence, and 6.5 more years because I loved what I'd become and wanted to help others do what I had done. That is, become an honest, accountable, contributing member in the community living a value-centered life of integrity. Let me repeat that because it's worth repeating. An honest, accountable, contributing member of the community living a value-centered life of integrity. That is what I learned at Delancey Street. Let me tell you something else about Delancey Street. Stanford University reports that no organization has been more successful at reducing recidivism than the Delancey Street Foundation. Also, the National Institute on Drug Abuse says that participants who go through a program with this model have lower levels of recidivism, drug abuse, depression, unemployment than they did prior to going through a program like this. But it is not easy. It is excruciatingly hard work. Guys like me don't change by just talking about our pasts or the wrongs we've done or the injustices done to us. No. Guys like me don't get clean or stay clean talking about drugs or triggers or relapse prevention or addiction theory. Please. Guys like us change by doing. What that means is acting as if. Acting as if you are honest until you become honest. Acting as if you are accountable until you become accountable. Doing the next right thing every single day for hundreds, if not thousands of days in a row until it becomes you. Until you have a paradigm shift in the way that you think. Until we recalibrate our moral compass. Next, it takes raw, relentless feedback from your peers. I will never forget my first haircut. No, not this kind. I don't need one of those. In therapeutic community vernacular, a haircut is a verbal reprimand, oftentimes administered in your face and in very colorful language. So one night I had rounded up a bunch of my white homeboys from Orange County, and we were sitting around a sectional in the common area. Well, they were sitting in the sectional. I was addressing them. One of the guys who was managing the facility at the time came by and it looked like a prison gang meeting. And he blasted me for it right there on the floor, loud enough for everybody to hear within a mile's earshot. He absolutely embarrassed me and he humiliated me because he was right. I was doing exactly what I had done in prison and what I had come there to change. No counselor could have told me that. I wouldn't have listened. Some dude in a white lab coat trying to tell me what it's like to be in prison wouldn't have been credible. But when somebody just like me, who's been there and done that, gives it to me raw and uncut until I hear it and own it, that works. That brings me back to the point I want to make today. There is a way to help guys like me, but it is not in trying to fix them. It is in inspiring them to fix themselves. Believe me when I tell you, it works. All we need is more therapeutic communities like Delancey Street or the Other Side Academy. Today, it is my goal to bring what Delancey Street gave to me to the rest of the world. Last year, some other Delancey Street graduates and myself started the Other Side Academy not more than a mile from where I stand. We know the world needs a bench, and we are determined to give it to them. There are millions like me for whom prison will only make them more hardened criminals. People whom, if offered a bench, a long time, and some peers who care, can become somebody they have never known. If it wasn't for that bench and my opportunity, today, instead of standing on this stage talking to you, I would be in a cell in prison with 11 years left on my sentence. A couple of months ago, a gentleman walked into our facility. He asked for an interview. I had him take a seat on the bench. I interviewed him, but I didn't see enough of a commitment from him to change, so I told him the Other Side Academy wasn't the place for him. He left. He went outside and he took a seat on our curb. I watched him through the window. He sat there for a long time. Finally, he came back and he knocked on our door and he knocked and he banged on that door. And when I opened it up, he was crying. He said, "Dave, I OD'd last night. My friends had to revive me. If you don't accept me, you're going to read about me in the obituary." I brought him back in, had him take a seat on the bench, and I re-interviewed him. This time, I saw a genuine desire, a burning desire to change. When he came back and he knocked on that door, begging for a chance, it reminded me of when I was knocking on that glass way back when, begging for my chance. His name is Leo. He's been with us now for a few months, and he's doing remarkably well. We are going to help him every step of the way, just like we are thousands just like him. Like I said previously, I spent the first half of my life helping people die. With your help, we can spend the rest of our lives helping them live. Thank you. Thank you.